Okay, everybody, I think we're going to try and get started here. It's a little bit after 6:30, and we want to respect your time kind of thing. So first of all, my name is Rick Leaf, and I'm chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I'd like to thank you very much for coming out tonight to our third community meeting to talk about the plan. This will be the last community meeting we're going to hold after tonight's discussion and input. The consultants will go back, make some final revisions to the plan, and then we'll be in a position where at some point, probably at the end of the summer, early fall, we'll get before the select board and make a presentation to the select board as to what the plan looks like and a lot of the input received from the community during these sessions kind of thing. So once again, thank you for coming. Before we start, I just want to repeat a couple of things that we talked about at the second community meeting. You're going to see in the diagrams here and the concept plans that a lot of what's possible involves private property. In no way does the town have any intention to be going in and just willy-nilly talking about taking private property. It's all up to the property owners as to what level they want to participate in this, and to the extent that someday some of this property may sell, new developers may want to accomplish some of what's on the plan here. There is public property that's involved here, 4 West Main Street. The old town hall is coming back to the town. There's some potential there. The existing fire station, which will be replaced in a couple of years, will become vacant, and there's some potential there. And there's some other things in the public ways that might be possible. So a combination of taking a look at currently owned public property and the potential for redevelopment of private property is involved here. As far as the time frame for doing things like this, a lot of towns that have done revitalizations are talking about a 5 to 10 year window, if not more, to do kind of a full revitalization. Once again, it's dependent on the status of private property and what people might want to do. So just sort of keep in mind here that we're talking about a long-term plan, although there's some really nice designs here, things that look really nice to do. This is something that just won't happen overnight. It will take planning. It will take participation of the town along with private entities. Obviously, it will take spending of money to do. There are certain grants, money that's available to do this, and certainly there'll be warrant articles that'll come up before town meetings in the future asking for funding to do some of these things also. So it's kind of a long process, but we need to start somewhere, and we need to have an idea of what we'd like to do. And Weston and Sampson has done a good job sort of defining what some of these things could look like for us. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to get a updated view on some of the things we talked about at the second community meeting, to talk a little bit about architectural designs, and then to open up the floor for comments and questions. And then, like I said, based on what we hear tonight and what we've heard from the other meetings, we'll go back and finish the plan and make a presentation to the select board after that. I think the best thing to do is let Jonathan here from Weston Sampson, Jonathan Law, go through his presentation, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and comments at the end of the presentation. So once again, thanks for coming, and I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Thanks, Rick. Can you hear me? Does that work? Does anybody want to move forward? COVID's over now. We can sit close together if you like. I'm Jonathan Law. I'm team leader at Weston Sampson, and I'm with my colleague Melissa Green today. And this is a third meeting, as Rick mentioned, that we've presented at. I just want to say I love that Rick just used the term willy-nilly in a public meeting. It's a very English term, and it's a great one to use, so thanks, Rick. As he said, this is, I think, the key word in that statement here is it's a vision. This is a vision. It's not set in stone. You know, as you all know, the people who have attended all 3 meetings, we've got to this point from input from the community, from the MPIC committee, from Laurie, from Rick, and Ashley, who were kind of the co-chairs of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So it's a vision that everybody has sort of helped to create to get to this point. By no means is it the finished vision. It's just where we are at this point. So again, I don't want people to look at this plan and be like, oh my goodness, you know, is that really the end result? It is for this part of the study, but once you get out of master plan, you go into a little bit more detail. That's when things can change. So this slide here, if people remember, this is what we presented last time, which is the 4 scenarios. So scenario 1 was Blake Street and around the area there that incorporated the existing fire station, soon to be the old fire station. Scenario 2 was the Harvey site, adjacent to the Assabet River. Scenario 3 was on the south side of West Main Street, between the Common and South Street. And then Scenario 4 was Main Street itself. If you recall from the last meeting, Main Street is kind of off the books in terms of major reconstruction or major design studies because of the traffic counts that we undertook, and the results that we got from that meant that making any major changes by reducing travel lanes in order to give ourselves wider sidewalks and street trees and things of that nature wasn't really possible. So I'm going to go over the first three scenarios that we talked about last time. So if you recall, scenario 1, this is again Blake Street. So the last presentation we gave, the renderings and the studies were a little bit more cartoony in their appearance. And we did that because, again, we didn't want to come to this presentation and people think that everything was finished and set in stone. So we used sort of a cartoon type graphic to help display ideas and thoughts, but still to have the option for people to give their thoughts and feedback. And that's what these final images, renderings, and plans you see for each three scenarios incorporate. So the major changes on this design from the one that you saw last time is you'll notice that the CVS building is no longer there. That parking lot that surrounds it has also been removed, and we've incorporated 3 new buildings that will be for commercial and retail use. Again, helping to increase the number of restaurants, bars, and shops that are currently missing in downtown, which again, if you recall from the first meeting, the graphics on the right side of the screen here all go back to the sticker game that we had that day that was very successful, where people generated ideas on what they wanted to see. And then I'll just track back. Those stickers and ideas were also developed from feedback that the town had already received on the survey that we put out, that what people wanted to see. So again, Blake Street is still one way, a one earth as we call it, which is a street that has parking down one side, vehicular access, but also pedestrian, bicyclists, all in equal measures. And then you can see the yellow dashed lines are the pedestrian routes, so lots of pedestrian connections throughout this space. We also have some plazas that are flexible, can host farmers markets in the wintertime, maybe ice rinks and things like that. And then obviously a better pedestrian connection to the old fire station, which under this proposal is going to be a restaurant, bar, a coffee shop. And then behind that is, again, an open green that is flexible with views of Cold Harbour Brook. So similar to last time, we've got these renderings that you can see are more lifelike. If you recall last time, we had 2D trees, orange 2D figurines for people, but now we're showing real trees, and I'll use in quotes, real people. So it just brings a little bit more life to the renderings, to the images and to the designs, and helps you to sort of visualize them a little bit better. So the image on the top left, if you're looking at it, is in the new plaza space that is currently behind the new mixed residential buildings just off Blake Street. The large building here, I can see I'm highlighting, is a proposed parking garage. The bottom left image is looking up Blake Street at the avenue of trees, and as I mentioned, this kind of dual purpose pedestrian way that has parking down one side, opportunities for food trucks and gathering, can close that street down at any point. Maybe a great location for Applefest. But again, pedestrian connections are just key in this sort of design. Then if we go over to the bottom right image, we talked about previously having some type of sculpture and art downtown was a huge component that people like to see. So again, just showing a location for art in there, and it could be something that is rotated year round, but the space remains the same. And then again, just a sort of another plaza space for pedestrians and gathering. And we have updated fly-through videos, which were very successful last time, and I'll show those at the end rather than breaking up the presentation. Then if we turn back, looking from Pierce Street back down to West Main Street. So again, great use of open space, thinking about urban heat island effects and the effects of that climate change on this design and on downtown urban neighborhoods. So providing a lot of shade from trees planted in the street, areas for seating beneath those trees for these potential restaurants and bars. You can see this old lady here that really loves the accessibility that's part of this street now, because we want to create designs that are accessible to everybody, that are universal. They're not, we're trying to avoid stairs, ramps, and things of that nature. So really designing spaces that think about everyone and how everybody uses them, because we can't all walk very well or get around the same way. So we want our designs to cater to everybody. Then if we go to the bottom image, you can see the green space between the existing building that remains by Pierce Street and then the new mixed-use housing and then parking garage here. So again, just providing moments of green, different places for people to hang out throughout this site. And then there's an aerial view on the bottom left of that space. And then again, if we look around the back, there's another flexible plaza, again with lots of street trees and protection from the elements. Sections. So one thing that I'll mention that I didn't mention till this point, but looking at the sections I just recall, a very important piece of information. So at the last meeting, we got feedback that people felt there was too much density, or the buildings were perhaps too tall in this area, or they were too tall, and that meant that there was too much housing. So what we did, we reduced the height of these buildings to be 30 feet. So we basically took a story off these buildings. So that helped to bring the density down, helped to make the space feel a little bit more open and less sort of urban, if you like. So you can see where these sections are cut: parking garage, open space, I just mentioned, and then Blake Street, new mixed building with some parking, and then the train track. Middle section, through the middle of the site, parking. New mixed-use building, again 30 feet tall, so the street trees have more human scale to them now, make the buildings feel even less tall. Flexible Blake Street with areas for food trucks or cars parking. Flexible plaza, and again planted buffer in the train tracks. And then lower section again shows another plaza space with a mixed-use building, and then Blake Street and how that all links pedestrian-wise. Then if we look at the old fire station site, obviously it's a great location. It has views of Cold Harbor Brook. The grade naturally slopes down there. So flexible green space here that could be used for small concerts, gatherings. Flexibility is key within this design. ADA access down to Cold Harbor Brook, and then the thought is that there would be some type of path connection that's adjacent to the Cold Harbor Brook. Behind the fire station, as I mentioned, the thought there that it could be maybe in the front, coffee shop, donut shop, but then in the rear could be some type of restaurant, bar, brewery, or something of that nature. So there's a flexible plaza behind, again, shade shelters for shelter from the sun, flexible plaza with movable tables and chairs. We've got some farmhouse seating here, so people can gather in larger numbers should they need to. And then just some views around the space. Then the view in the top right is it's another small area where you could have some outdoor dining for the coffee shop that is adjacent to Mill Street. And then just some sections through that space. So again, straight through this amenity terrace, we can see the shade structures there and the flexible seating beneath. Then we have a section through the green open space in the middle, and then finally at the bottom a longitudinal section through the building from the street and then all the way down to Cold Harbor Brook. So you can see how that grade naturally goes down to Cold Harbor Brook and creates a nice kind of miniature amphitheater. So numbers, what does that mean with this new design? Flexible plaza spaces, pocket parks, and the restaurants and cafes are all similar. The multifamily housing and multifamily housing went down. Adaptive reuse stayed the same because that's the old fire station and town hall. Commercial retail space remained the same. Parking spaces in the garage remained the same. We did add more on-street parking because we took the CVS site, so along Pierce Street, to bring some vitality. We included a wider sidewalk there with street trees and an area for parallel parking adjacent to the curb without affecting the existing width of Pierce Street for vehicular movements. And then you can see the 3 buildings that we added, 20,000 square feet of office / retail space. So all these designs have been discussed with the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So we got to this point with their help, which was great. And they asked us to show some ideas of what potential the architecture within this area could look like. So again, these are just some thoughts that we're putting out there for feedback from everybody. We showed these to the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and they liked what they saw. What we're trying to do here is have a mixture of traditional, but using some type of contemporary measures. So for a combination of brick here with clapboard, hardy siding. So again, thinking about sustainability now, can we design things that are going to last a long time? They are a little bit different to what you see downtown, but the bottom right image, is something similar to what that is there today. And then again, bottom left image could certainly fit right in with what's already downtown. But again, these are just our thoughts to open discussions about what people really want to see. So if we go to scenario 2, again, Harvey development. We haven't really changed much about this from last time. The density remains the same. We kept the buildings at 48 feet high because this is its own animal, if you like. It's currently, as you know, a site for dumpsters and trash collection, so and surrounded by a wooded area. So if we had slightly taller buildings here, it doesn't really affect the close proximity of its neighbors. And where it does, along the Assabet, we're heavily planting this zone to have a multi-use trail that comes along adjacent to the Assabet River. So again, we'll just go through some views here. So image here showing how we can have crosswalks connections to a new playground. Bottom left is an aerial of kind of hovering over Main Street, looking back at this new building and the green open space and the trail system as it begins. As I mentioned, this is now a 2 new-way street with parallel parking on both sides. So parking is key down here. There's lots of space for people to park. We have a parking garage up by Hudson Street, but then also a parking garage structure, but also a couple of at-grade surface parking areas as well. So parking should not be an issue in this area. And again, this is still, 5-minute walk from current downtown. So again, key location that still feels part of downtown, extending downtown, if you like. Then if we go to this top right, looking again aerially at the new riverfront trail system with lots of new tree planting. Again, thinking about how can we green up the space, reduce the amount of pavement and impervious surfaces, and then just offering places of respite for people to when they're walking along the trail. So another area for some communal seating with a trellis for protection from the shade. And then if we go to the bottom right, again, just another look at this oval lawn space. Again, flexible space for some smaller gatherings, maybe somebody's playing a guitar out there and in the summer months. But again, just great pedestrian connections all the way from Main Street all the way up to Hudson. And then a few more images looking kind of aerially back at the playground and the parking area and the trail. Then a zoomed in look at the play space, again, that will help to serve the new residents that live in these buildings. And then just another few views of the trail system itself. And then finally, if we flip back to Hudson, looking back towards Main Street, it's a very heavily wooded site here. We're trying to maintain a lot of those trees within this design, but incorporate a new trail system through there. So you can see we're trying to, as I mentioned, trying to keep as many trees as we can, but incorporate another different trail than the one that would be adjacent to the Assabet. Another comment that we got from meeting with the Master Planning Implementation Committee was that there's great views of the Assabet River and Cold Harbour Brook from this location. So again, just providing a shaded element for people to sit and look at these views that come from this space. And then finally, just another look at the trail where the Assabet and the Cold Harbour Brook merge. Sections again through the site. So top one, new trail system with the overlook is up by Hudson Street, parking garage, complete street, two-way traffic, parking on both sides, and street trees, so a complete street if you like. And then the new mixed-use building, and then the terrace that's adjacent to that, and then how we get down to the Assabet and the riverfront trail system. Middle section through one of the housing developments, existing new trail between the existing trees on the left, complete street again coming through the site, and then the connection to the trails and how we get down closer to the Assabet. And then the lower section is through the playground area, complete street, wide sidewalks, plenty of accessibility for everyone, and then how we get back down to the trail system closer to the Assabet. These numbers haven't really changed because I said the density remained the same, the open space remained the same, and the parking remained the same. And then, we think about the architecture here. So we talked previously about could we incorporate some parking within the residential buildings, and the answer to that is yes. And we were looking at maybe some podium parking. So what that is, like you can see in this image here, the top right image is podium parking is basically at-grade parking that's hidden behind the facade of a building, so you wouldn't tell it's parking. It looks like it is a normal building. So for example here we could have some retail below, but then the parking could be hidden behind that. Because as soon as you start going below grade, then the cost of parking and structures and construction really increases a lot. But again, just a flavor of the type of architecture that could be brought into this section of downtown. And finally, we'll go to scenario 3, which we're calling Assabet Mill. So Main Street and South Street kind of wrap around here, and then Gill Street to the side. Then the town common is off over here. So again, this is all new architecture, new buildings. Previously, we had 48 feet in here. We reduced the density height adjacent to Main Street and West Main Street down to 30 feet. To be more in keeping with the residential neighborhoods here. Wrapping the site here with new housing, which would be townhomes, something similar to that rather than being multi-story mixed-use housing. And then in the middle, a new building for, again, retail, shops, restaurants, and things like that. So as we look from Gale Street down into the site, again, two-way traffic, parking on both sides, heavily planted with street trees, bicycle lanes, so again, wide sidewalks, another complete street that you could come through and connect to Gale Street. Another surface parking lot that could be used for this site, but also people wanting to park and get closer to the town common or connect to the trail system. Lower areas showing the new sidewalk and parallel parking adjacent to South Street. So again, we kept the same curb or the same travel lane limits that we have today, and just brought the curb in to allow for parallel parking adjacent to the curb. So again, just providing more vitality to this area. And then if we swing around looking at the center of the site, this new open green space with opportunities for food trucks, outside dining, and a trellis again for people to sit and relax. A few more views, central space, kind of mini plaza here for people again to gather in small or large numbers. The entrance to the site, so Assabet Mill, some type of signage here, green open space, trees help to really flank and delineate entrances in and out of the site. Again, places for artwork, which is very important, we heard. And then just another view of this green open space with areas for seating on the perimeter, and then another view of the road as you come down through the site. Sections through here. So again, you'll notice the density came down 30 feet maximum building height, which I think really helps to fit in with the existing neighborhood along South Street. Sections through, new buildings, two-way traffic. Again, lots of flexible plaza space or public open space for people to gather. And then a new two-way traffic street again on the other side, and then connections to Gale Street. And then Town Common, access corridor through there, off-street parking, two-way traffic, new mixed-use building, and then again the flexible plaza space and the loop road that comes through there. And then the lower one is access to the corridor, Assabet Park, new townhomes, the two-way traffic travel lane that comes through with parking on either side, green infrastructure, the mixed-use building I mentioned, and then again townhomes helping to flank the side where South Street is. And then what does that mean? So the flexible plaza space, pocket parks, trails are all the same. The mixed-use housing came down, multi-use family housing came down slightly. Commercial retail space remained the same, restaurants, parking spaces all remained the same. And then some of the architecture that could potentially fit into here. So you can see the scale of the buildings have come down significantly. Clapboard siding, introducing maybe some brick, again to tie in with some of the other architecture that's downtown. And more townhome in the middle rather than being sort of multi-story, multi-functional housing. So then, when we met with the Master Plan Implementation Committee, as Rick mentioned, some of these ideas could be 10, 15 years out. So they asked us, what could we do initially to help make downtown a little bit more vibrant straight off the bat? So, Melissa walked the site with some of the committee, and they picked out a certain building that people liked but thought could be improved with pretty small measures, but that would really go a long way. So the existing image is on the top left. You can see the main image here. And this is something we talked about previously, simple things like providing movable planters along the sidewalks, new awnings in front of the buildings, and then something as simple as bringing the brick back to the upper level of this building and even adding the cornice that used to be back on there, and then adding some new shutters. So, simple measures that could be part of an initial first phase. Then we looked at another sort of easy implementation, I'll say easy in quotes, but something that again could be done in maybe the first year or so, depending on how money becomes available, and how the town wants to proceed with this master plan. But you can see the Church Street view before, so it's a very important intersection, but it's heavily dominated by pavement, not very green. There's zero green infrastructure. And then if you look at the bigger image to the right, that's an after view. Something as simple as extending that planted island a little bit more, putting some street trees in there. Again, native plant material at the lower level, and perhaps incorporating some green infrastructure within the island. And then again, if you go to the opposite side of the driveway, more planting there, screening the building a little bit more. It just, again, simple measures that make a pretty big visual impact to this part of downtown. So finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the master plan report will include. And again, we presented this to the MPIC, and they gave this the rubber stamp. So once we've gone through this meeting today and people have given feedback, we'll then incorporate some of that feedback into the final plan and then bring that into this master plan report. So A, the purpose and need of the plan. B, existing conditions analysis. C would be infrastructure assessment, so assessing what's there today. Traffic volumes, as I mentioned, we did traffic studies, traffic counts, so we'll incorporate that into the master plan and talk about why we couldn't make improvements to Main Street and downtown as we would have wished. Then market analysis, which has been a big key component of this, which has helped to sort of help design the master plan where it is today. So, the building sizes, the building heights, and what's included in those buildings was based on feedback from you, but also from the market analysis that RKG and Associates did. So it's, it all kind of merges together. Then we'll have a downtown revitalization analysis, which you've seen a lot of it today, and we've done a lot of that work already. And then the revitalization strategies and recommendations. So thinking about short-term strategies. So as I mentioned, the last image you saw, or last couple of images you saw, potentially short-term strategies, which could be 0 to 3 years. Medium-term, 0 to 7. And then long-term, 7+. And then finally, how could we implement some of these strategies? And then, before I finish, you're probably sick of my voice now, but I'll show the revised fly-throughs. So that was Blake Street. This is the Harvey site. I think you'll notice how happy everybody is in these images. And that completes the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so I guess open to comments, questions, clarifications. Go ahead.
All the apartment buildings in, I don't need it. And all the apartment buildings and housing that you have there, we weren't talking about that being downtown. That's not what the planning committee back a few years ago came out with. That's why I was asking up front what kind of a criteria, what kind of a sideboards were you given in, if you just looked at that master plan that was manufactured out of those meetings a few years ago before COVID, all that was asked of the residents here was a series of questions that we were more or less saying yes or no to, like, do you think we need more golf courses in town? We got 36 holes now, but of course, if some guy like me said, yeah, we should put in 2 more golf courses, you think they'd put that in the master plan? They probably would. And then, what are you gonna do? Bulldoze down a section of town, take some houses out and put a golf course in? It's just totally unrealistic. Some of those questions that came out of it were unrealistic, and the vision that you have in that master plan that was written is not a vision statement, not like the vision statements I know for master planning. And it takes in nothing about the economy and the taxes. You've got to think of the future here, not just next week or next year. And we're not going to be putting up any kind of development to the extent that you've shown here. We're not going in that direction. And some of that's got to be taken into account when you start designing some of this stuff, or even proposing it,
Well, I understand where you're coming from. As we said at the beginning, how this is going to develop over time, and it's going to be over a long period of time.
Oh, I don't care if it's 50 years, Rick. I mean, that's unrealistic.
Well,
We weren't talking about building a city here, a small city. We're not looking for a main street like Marlborough. That we made damn clear when we did that master planning. That's what's upsetting about it.
Well, I think there were a lot of different points of view expressed at the master plan. I think that that definitely there was a feeling that the downtown we have now was not what people wanted to see. What the buildings are going to look like that get built over time in the downtown are going to change based on what the town wants to see and to a certain extent what the private property owners want to build. I think the whole point of this exercise was to define a space that was significantly different than the space we have now, but not to say it was going to look exactly like this, only that I think the things that were brought out in this plan as far as more greenery, the bring in more shops and restaurants and things like that to the town were all expressed as part of things that people want to see in the master plan. As we worked through it, the feedback we got from the economic development people that were brought in by RKG, by Weston Sampson, the project was that any downtown that had been revitalized included an additional amount of housing mixed in with the commercial buildings, that the developers, for them to actually make the thing viable, needed a mix of commercial and housing. And so the plan references that if in fact no housing will be built in or around the downtown area.
Well, you're seeing that now, Rick. You've got developers now that are using the strategy now of two-tiering, building these buildings with commercial space or retail space down below and apartments up above. We're seeing that come in now. Now, that is housing. Not the kind of housing I want to see, or quite frankly, I don't like that mix within a business area. That's just me. Maybe someone else it's okay. But they can't even fill the retail space that they have now. And in the foreseeable future, you're not going to be seeing a lot of more businesses crop up all over the place. You're losing businesses. The economy's just not going to support it. The incomes of people not going to support it. And unless something's done with the tax and the cost of living expenses, you're not going to be building anything remotely close to this stuff on it. And you don't want it, some of us don't want it in the first place. This isn't what we envisioned. You keep talking about Northborough here as a rural community, the history and the tradition of it on it. Well, it's gone beyond rural. But by no means do a lot of the people that are from this area, from the town, from Worcester County, want to see a city built. And we've made that known. And I'm sure that's not, for everyone. A lot of the younger folks coming in, maybe they think they, need all of this stuff to have a quality living. You got a traffic problem in town, and certainly that isn't going to solve the traffic problem. So, I mean, when you talk revitalization, I mean, you got to have some sort of idea of what kind of town you want.
I understand.
It wasn't a city.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but
Seeing how many buildings and people you could put into a damn, X number of square feet or mileage, So I don't know.
all right, I understand your comments, but I'd like to open up the floor to other comments also. Other people in the back?
Yeah, hi, I'm Adi Pandit. I live on Assabet Hill Circle. So one thing I was curious about is that I really like these ideas for developing these downtown areas to revitalize them. And I think it's really important for the long-term economic sustainability of the town. But I was wondering if you have considered extending the sidewalks for another half a mile or 1 mile. So for example, I live off of Westbrook Street. There is half a mile where it is not safe or legal for me to either cross the street or walk on the street. So that will really help the existing residents to access these areas, and we can just be there by biking or walking. So that's one comment I had. And one more thing I had was that I know you started your presentation with that Main Street is off discussion because of the traffic count. But I'm also a member of a non-profit group called Strong Towns, which tries to encourage towns to go back to the way American towns used to be. And they used to be mixed use. And they used to have slower main street with less number of lanes. And that was increasing the quality of life people had, where you could just walk to a store or a shop downtown and hang out with your friends. So right now I have to go with my neighbor to Hudson to enjoy a downtown. I would really like to just walk down to our downtown and enjoy it. So these are the 2 comments I had.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Carter Brannon. I think looking at your presentation, some of the strengths that I see is the kind of pedestrian sort of plan, and especially kind of trying to incorporate the accessibility of it. And I think again to the previous speaker's point, I think something that might be somewhat missing with it is a focus on how to increase pedestrian connectivity to the neighborhoods surrounding the downtown area. But something that I see that's kind of seems, I don't want to say wrong, but sort of off to me about some of the plans is that it seems to sort of ignore the existing kind of historic structures and existing kind of good elements of the downtown neighborhood. So, for example, Blake Street, all of those buildings are very nice historic buildings, as well as along South Street that these plans kind of propose demolishing and building new buildings that really I don't think are, I feel like that would kind of harm the kind of both aesthetic and pedestrian, like walkability of the neighborhood. I'm not entirely sure I understand the intention behind reducing the amount of housing in the downtown that from the previous renditions. I understand the first speaker sort of talked about how the rural character of the town would potentially be harmed, and so maybe this was an attempt to sort of make it seem less city-like. But I think the kind of, I guess the intent behind a downtown revitalization is to establish the downtown area more of as a village rather than a city that the rest of the town can, I mean, the town needs more housing, and housing is too expensive in this town. I think I will probably be priced out of my hometown here. I think there are many people I know who are currently being priced out of this town, and so more affordable housing should be a top priority of the town's planning, and the state is requiring more dense housing areas, and we should kind of be trying to consolidate that into a more downtown area as opposed to eliminating building these large houses all over town, and that's what's damaging the rural character of the town. But I guess I'm kind of rambling now, but I think that if you were to try to make some adjustments to this plan, I would ask that you try to maybe consider, retain some of the historic structures, especially along South Street and on Blake Street, that I simply don't see any. I mean, if I'm, with all due respect to you, I think you're doing your job and you seem to be doing a pretty good job with it. But I think that this revitalization project would simply destroy what is already a okay downtown rather than improve it.
Okay, thanks for your comments. One thing that we need to keep in mind is that it was impossible to draw buildings with any level of certainty as to what they may look like sometime down the road. It's entirely possible that some of the buildings that exist could be reused as they are. Other buildings may be taken down and built, and the style in which they're built is something that we're going to need to work our way through as a town in terms of what our zoning eventually says, what our design guidelines say, and what the development community feels they want to build. There'll be a lot of negotiations back and forth on that. And we've talked a lot about the fact that how we represent some of these ideas was something more than just kind of boxes. because the buildings obviously will not be boxes, and the size and shape of the buildings and the exteriors will all vary over time. So I understand your comments, and I think that we'll find as we work our way through this what the town really wants and what the town doesn't want, and that'll play out over time, over many years. Other comments?
Hello, I have the mic over here. My name is Priscilla. I live off of Pine Haven on J Avenue. And I grew up in Northborough as well, Davis Street and J Ave. And I'm extremely in support of adding these pedestrianized spaces. I do think it's going to improve not only quality of life, but also the economic vitality of the downtown. Growing up here, before I was able to get a driver's license and have a car, it was just, I was very limited in where I could go or where I could provide business based on what was walkable to me and to my friends, right? So we would go to like Lala Java because it was near where we lived. But, to have more spaces where you have housing near business, I think it really does make sense, right? The more accessible places, the more likely you are to provide business. So I'm really excited about this prospect of more mixed-use development, more pedestrianized spaces, more bicycle infrastructure. I'm very much in support, and thank you for bringing these plans to us. One comment I have about the bicycle infrastructure is, I have a couple comments. So one is, I'm not sure if you guys have discussed protected bike lanes. I took an environmental epidemiology course last semester. I was really doing some research into what factors affect whether people choose to walk or cycle in a place, and more protected bike lanes as opposed to painted lines help people to feel safer. They also are safer because they're farther away from all the traffic. I'm wondering if that's something that's been talked about or that would be incorporated. So that's one question there. And then I have other comments. I don't know if you want to pause.
I'll turn that over to Lori, because we're accepted as a complete streets town, and some of that has factors in terms of bikeability and pedestrian traffic as well as vehicular traffic.
Yeah, so we did complete a complete streets prioritization plan maybe about 6 months ago. I think it was ultimately approved by the state. First, it was approved by the Board of Selectmen. And on that prioritization plan, there are a number of bicycle improvements that are listed. So there are certain corridors that have been identified as priority bike routes. So that's definitely something that we've been talking about. Within the downtown, what we were thinking about is providing bike racks in various locations that make sense, like, at the municipal buildings, at the common, places where people would like to ride their bikes too. So that's kind of where we were focusing. We're kind of limited with Route 20 being what it is and not being able to modify the lanes in any way. So if people want to ride their bikes on Route 20, they can, but I don't think it necessarily feels comfortable.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you for that. So I also wanted to say, because you brought up the bicycle racks, another thing that has been a concern in other places that have more bicycle riders is bicycle theft. I'm not sure that would be a huge deal in Northborough, but one of the factors that reduces bicycle theft is having the bicycle racks in well-trafficked areas rather than around the corner and in the shadows where people are more likely to not be seen taking your bike. So that's one consideration for the placement of the bicycle infrastructure. But yes, certainly, I don't know if over time we'd be able to make changes to the downtown lanes, because what might happen is when you have more cycling and walking, you can actually reduce traffic through having these other alternate forms of transportation. So maybe someday through these incremental improvements, we will be able to have that circular sort of relationship.
So one of the benefits of the Complete Streets funding is they mandate that you provide bicycle accommodations on any sort of project that they fund. So if in a perfect world, according to me, we would be putting the vast majority of the investment, the Complete Streets grant funds, which max out at $500,000 over a 4-year period of time. So we would be putting the vast majority of that money in the downtown. So wherever that money goes, so say it's on Blake Street or Pierce Street or Hudson Street, there is a requirement to do the bicycle accommodation. Now I can't say at this point what that's going to be. It may be sharrows, it may be a bike lane. It hasn't been designed yet, so I can't speak to it. But there will definitely be some sort of bike accommodation.
Excellent, thank you. And then I just want, sorry, a few thoughts on this. The other thing that you mentioned about adding the trees, right, to reduce the urban heat effect, I think that's really important, something that Northborough could improve in general. I'm excited that it's going to be a part of the downtown revitalization. There are other areas where I think it could also be improved. So like, for example, coming from Pine Haven area to Route 20, I have tried walking, there's a sidewalk there. But it's there's not really like trees that are medium sized that provide shade that are close enough and proximal enough to where people walk and bike, where it actually provides a more comfortable experience and more green space at eye level. So that's another thing that could be improved, is just along the Route 20 corridor in general, and on other streets in Northborough, is just more of that green space that's more proximal to the street. I think that's it for now. I'll pause.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you. I can definitely see, unlike some other people, I can definitely see where, going backwards, it's really easy, right, to see from this meeting to the meeting before to the meeting before when we were here with the stickers, and right, really taking that feedback and, kind of in programming, right, we're iterating, right? So we're iterating and we're doing something, feeding it back, you're saying it back to us. So I definitely want to say thank you. As I guess as a middle-aged person with kids, my wife and I moved here from Worcester when our oldest child was going to start kindergarten, and it's great. But I was just doing the math, and I think I'd be priced out of my house if I was to, sell my house and buy it. I might be priced out of it. So having this housing here is great, and I honestly, I've said it before, I think that we cannot afford to not do this. Because this is where we're putting businesses back in. This is affordable housing, both in the the defined official term and as well as just for other people, where we have college students, right? Where young professionals don't need a car. They might not want a car, and so now we are attracting those people here, which will help increase our tax base. I've gone on multiple places recently where I can't do it in Northborough, but I'll park my car. And you have a beer, and then you go walk around with a date, or hang out with my friends, and we can't do that here. And so now, rather than me putting my money back into Northborough, I'm putting my money into Hudson, into Marlborough, into Upton, into places in New York, into places in New Jersey, into Boston. Whereas we could be having people from New York, New Jersey, Grafton, other places, put their money into here, which would be super helpful. I understand that some people, on the plus side, on the building heights, I know that some people, I was a little sad to hear that those were being reduced. I mean, I understand. On the plus side, though, it is, my wife pointed out, it is within the existing building codes, which might kind of grease the wheels, make things easier. And then also just on the more bikeability would be great. I can say as a avid cyclist, I mountain bike, I road bike. On rush hour, I can get to CVS. I live right by Wycliffe, so I can get to CVS faster than anybody in a car. But I have no place to park my bike. And now I'm that weird guy in bike kit walking his expensive bike through CVS. Like, I want to go to Ace. I can get to Ace faster. And it would be great. I barely drive my car now because of COVID. But I have no place to put it. So just definitely those sorts of things. If we could increase being able to get into downtown, or me being able to bike from where I am to there, that'd be amazing. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christine. I live on Church Street. I haven't been able to be at the previous two, so if anything I say is been addressed, I'm sorry. But I have two comments. The first is I'm not opposed to any of the projects, but I will reiterate what a couple of people have said, that I really think, and I was under the impression that this was an attempt to fix the problems we have in downtown first, like the fact that Town Hall is empty, instead of leaving it there and there's no address of what are we going to do with it. And things like Old Minty is still sitting there empty. We're going to put in all this new stuff, and what are we doing with these buildings that are just sitting there empty? I think those things need to be addressed first, before we start putting up stuff that maybe will also be empty. If we can't fill the stuff we've already got, how are we going to fill the stuff that you're proposing to put up? That's my first comment. My second is for the first proposal. Again, I wasn't here for the previous thing, so I don't know if you guys talked about if that parking structure is going to have ingress and egress off Pierce Street. That is going to be a nightmare for that intersection of Pierce and Church, because that intersection is already a nightmare with people trying to turn left onto Church, people pulling all the way into the intersection onto Church when they try to turn left from Church onto Pierce. So if that goes through, before it happens, somebody's got to fix that problem. Because I've almost been in an accident for like 5 times there because people do not know how to do that intersection. So again, I'm not opposed to the projects. I just think there's some pretty big issues first.
I can answer your first question. So your first question is about the empty town hall, the old town hall. So, yeah. So there's an RFP out right now to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study to look at the current town hall, the 4 West Main Streets, so the historic town hall, and White Cliffs to see as to the feasibility of which building makes the most sense for town hall. So they're going to be developing cost estimates for what it's going to take to use any of these buildings for town hall. So that is in the works. I know the town currently is in the process of acquiring 4 West Main Street back. So it is not currently within the town's possession. But definitely there are plans, there's thinking about what's going to happen if the town hall were to move and what's going to happen with the resulting space.
Yeah, we
So.
Even if we move it, that just means we have another building.
Yeah, and as for the parking garage, this is just an idea, and that would be most likely years in the future, and unknown whether that would actually happen. So this is just a concept. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen in the near.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
To me, when I saw that, I thought, oh God, not more people coming up here.
No, I hear you because I go that route, and so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And obviously, as things get proposed to actually be done to implement some of this, the work will be done. Implications of it are how it should be built, what needs to be done to make it feasible in reality. So once again, as Lori said, the idea of this plan was just to develop some ideas and concepts of generally what could be done, but the specifics would be worked out project by project.
So I know someone else mentioned it about reusing some of the buildings that are there, and you guys showed us your slides with the 6 different, potential designs for the multi-use housing, for the townhouses and all that. And my one comment for that is I'm just personally worried about it becoming another cookie cutter kind of like shopping area, such as the one that was built in Maynard, the one that was built in Wayland at 20 and 126, because those looked all identical to what those look like. It's essentially like the Avalon style or the new multi-use where you do have the apartments on top, which is fine, and then the commercial on the bottom, but just to give it a look that might not look like the cookie cutter shopping plazas in Maynard and Wayland, but maybe something more like what you see in downtown Lexington or maybe even downtown Concord, where it's going to be more brick or something like that.
Understood. I mean, that's definitely something that's,
Anyway, it's way down the road. I was just like, I saw that and I was like, oh, it's just like the one in Maynard that went up. It's just like the one in Wayland that went up. It's like all the ones going up.
yeah.
You want to go next, or? Okay. She had her hand open up before you.
Susie Sislika. I'm both on the zoning board and on a committee that plans a lot of events in town. So I just want to say, like, if we do any of these plans, like, there's a lot of zoning changes that'll come into play. And I know, well, I'll have to go to town meeting. So everyone's going to have to go to town meeting and vote. So we're all going to have to do that. So that'll be another meeting to attend. But so these will all go in stages. And I hope, like, one of the first things that will put in place is parking, because no matter what, and I tell Lori this all the time, like, she hears me say all the time, I'm like, we need parking downtown, because even if when we do have events downtown, like Apple Fest or anything, if you see like children running around right now, they're mine in here. And we always park like blocks and blocks and blocks from Apple Fest, and you have to park blocks and blocks from events in the common, and you have to just walk, and we don't have sidewalks connecting anything downtown, and it can be dangerous at times, and I'm always carrying like 6 apple pies, and it's like, it's terrible walking back to the car. But I hope that's in consideration. If you ever do anything in stages, please plan parking at the top of the list. Like, always get parking first. Because there are some of us that live like 2 or 3 miles outside of town, and we want to enjoy all of this. And I know housing will be downtown, but there's all of us that live outside of downtown that really want to go to all these shops and restaurants, like the gentleman set up there. I can't wait to have a restaurant downtown to like go and meet my friends and have a drink and then go shopping. Like, I mean, how great will that be? Like, I can't wait to do that in my own town. So, yeah, I'm just really excited. I saw all of these. I'm very excited for, you know, all of them, but thank you. And I'm just telling everybody to go to, you know, annual town meeting. I'm just encouraging everyone. Thank you.
And we agree that parking is critical for any of this to work.
Hi, I love the plan. Great. Can't wait for it to happen. I wanted to ask you more about the analysis of Route 20 and the whole Main Street not being able to be changed. You had said you'd done an analysis that concluded it couldn't be changed. Can you talk more about that? And also in that discussion, maybe talk to whether or not you analyzed if the traffic is local, or is 20 being used as a cutoff between 495, 290, and 495 and 9. The thought being that if it wasn't so easy to cut through Northborough on your way, to cut the leg of the triangle, take the long axis of a triangle instead of taking 495 down to 9 or to 290, that would we have the same amount of traffic? Meaning, if the lanes weren't there, would people not use it as a cutoff? Was that kind of analysis done? And if so, what were the results? And love the plan.
From the analysis we did, we can't tell where people are going once they go through downtown. It was basically at 3 intersections in downtown, so once the cars went beyond that, we don't know where they go. We didn't follow where they went. But as everybody knows in here, lots of people do cut through downtown. Basically, in short, the study showed that if we took away a lane, the waiting times increase significantly, which are already not great downtown at certain times. So, for example, the intersection in front of the church? Yeah, Hudson, that intersection there, the backup nearly increased twofold. So by taking the one lane out, it really impacted how long people were waiting at each one of these traffic lights.
Did you look to see if it would reduce people using the cutoff? Meaning, if it wasn't convenient and quick, they wouldn't come here anymore unless they're coming to Northborough.
That wasn't part of this study. We were just counting the amount of traffic that came through this part of downtown. That would be a different study altogether.
Yeah, I think that's something that, you know, as we work our way through the plan, to the extent that we want to reanalyze, you know, traffic patterns again, and take a look at Route 20 again, that's something that we could decide to do, probably at some cost to do it again, but we could do it. I think in the short term, though, we were hopeful that once we analyze the current traffic patterns we had now, it would demonstrate there was a way to manage things that we could, as the professionals call it, do some sort of a road diet on Route 20 through the center of town. But as we looked at the data, it basically said that if we tried that, two things would happen. The waits to get through the center of town would become unmanageable, and if anything, they would start forcing people to drive through the side streets to avoid the main street, which was even a worse result. So that's not to say that longer term there are other things that we could look at to manage traffic, but for at least for the scope of the study we did for the downtown, it just didn't seem to be a reasonable short-term way to cut down on the size of Route 20. But certainly, as we analyze going forward what could be done, we could look at the traffic again. Other comments or questions?
I think it's an excellent plan, and I think it's very ambitious. I think at the second meeting it was mentioned that you envisioned that all 4 scenario zones could be worked on at the same time simultaneously, depending on when the property is available and when you have developers. It would seem to me that the river area where Harvey's is would be the place where you could get the biggest success in a short period of time, because that's the area where we have where the town owns the most property, and it basically just depends on Harvey's. Have you thought about concentrating on one zone to give a success story?
Well, I think on all the privately owned property, the issue is going to be when the property owners have an interest, either on their own or through sale of their property, to make the opportunity available to do something different. One thing that we are going to talk about in the report is the current economic development capability of the town and some recommendations as to what the town could do to increase its ability to work on economic development and to start to work with private property owners and understand what their desires are, what the town's desires are, and to make some headway. And certainly the Harvey property would be a good area to look at. But at this point, we have some ability on public spaces to prioritize some work in property that the town owns. As we've talked about, if the town regains ownership of 4 West Main Street, or when the town gets the new fire station built, there's some good potential in those spaces. But as far as private property goes, even though we might want to prioritize a particular area of town, unless we have some ability to make that known and negotiate with private property owners, we'll just be sort of waiting to see what develops in those areas.
It just seems like that Harvey's area is the place that's least developed right now and would be the easiest to develop, as long as you could attract.
If the owner of that property, and I think that property is transferring ownership as we speak, if the new owner of that property has a desire to want to talk about that, we'd certainly talk to him about it.
The new owner of that property is actually in Texas, so that's a little bit challenging.
Hi, I'm Dario DeMar. I'm on the Master Plan Implementation Committee and the Design Review Committee and the Building Committee for the new town hall. And I think we probably missed a little bit of what we had done, didn't show up. One of the biggest things that we're trying to do everywhere is the sidewalks. It seems so fundamental and so needed and so basic. And if you sat in, one of the planning committee meetings, this person here, Lori, we're looking at an ice cream store where the old Texas barbecue used to be. Well, we were really pretty adamant about we're going to have a sidewalk there. They didn't want a sidewalk there, but we really want a sidewalk there. It's also inviting children and people, and there's no way to get to it, yet, you're trying to get the whole community to go there. So sidewalks, I think everywhere, has been pretty much a mantra that the Master Plan Implementation Committee, the general master plan for the whole town is all embraced, which I think is really important to understand. I don't think there's anything I would build or endorse or support that didn't have a sidewalk in front of it from when I moved into the town. That's a big deal. Another thing that we kind of missed here, we had one slide that showed a building downtown where we turned the painted brick into real brick and added a cornice, where we're restoring one of our buildings. And it could be really nice and it could be beautifully restored. Again, it's a private property, so we need their support. But we spent a whole day, and none of it showed up here, but I just want everybody to know, we spent a whole day walking around town saying, this building's beautiful, this building's beautiful, this building's beautiful. Let's echo some of that in the new architecture. Now, that didn't come out in their presentation, but Weston Sampson went on a tour with us. And I think these are more massing diagrams than what they're really going to look like. But our goal was absolutely to try to tie into what we have here, celebrate what we have here. We have some brick here, just to make a point, but we also have some beautiful buildings that aren't brick. If you look on the westbound side of Route 20, starting, all the way from the town hall, there's beautiful houses and buildings on the left-hand side, the library. They're gorgeous. They're all different styles, from Craftsman to Victorian, and they're beautiful, but we can make our buildings, the new ones, look like that, and we should, because that was kind of our goal. And a lot of the stuff we're showing, here's buildings that are built everywhere, but I don't think that was our real intent. So there's probably a little bit of, hey, this is massing and not necessarily actually what we would want and support. I think the Design Review Committee has a lot of influence on that. So did everybody's comment. So that village piece is possible to a point, but we still need the density. So that was something else that I think people didn't quite get, but boy, oh boy, did we spend time looking at that. I think the sidewalks, if you can show the Harvey, right, do you have the Harvey plan? Because that was one we walked around again with Weston Sampson and a lot of people from the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and we were all going, wow, this is really nice, this is really great, because we wanted to be able to walk different places. So on the Harvey plan, yep. Yeah, the yellow dashed lines. But I think Harvey, that it's not shown, but I think, yeah, that's great. So on that plan, if you look, it's hard. I'm going to walk up here. This was something that we discovered, and if you look all the way from the town halls here, you can technically, and what wasn't shown in the drawings, there's a steep hill here going down all along that area. So the tall buildings won't be as tall because it slopes down pretty steep. But if you went all the way back to Hudson Street and to the downtown, this is all walkable. We actually have walking paths back there that connect all the way from the church back here to the back of the town hall, and if that's connected here, now you can walk in a lot of different areas, kind of behind the scenes, but they're great opportunities, and we actually walked it, and everybody's going, wow, that's really cool. The other thing that we looked at downtown is, can we put a footpath across the railroad tracks? Because there's a lot of parking on the other side, and that pedestrian access was absolutely emphasized, and he did it, and they did it, but I don't think it came through how important it was to have sidewalks everywhere, because that was probably one of the biggest things, is to improve that communication. And I think the last thing was the Harvey thing. There's connections there. We don't own it. We'd love to own it, but tying into the river and all those other areas would be, it's a holy grail. The traffic thing, I'll just speak 2 seconds to that. There's a lot of traffic going through Northborough, not to Northborough, because of the easy access to 290. That's a tough one. And do we jam it up and say, okay, people are so fed up, they're gonna go a different way and suffer for 2 years? I don't know the answer to that. But we really, anything we can do to help on that, I think is great. And that's all I got. But I did want to fill you in on the historic stuff. We spent a lot of time looking at, and I think everybody got that. It probably didn't come through as well. We only had one slide showing, hey, look what we can do, you know, especially the downtown, the town hall and those spaces. They can really look nice when they're all done. That's it.
Other comments?
You keep that one.
Thank you. I think you have done a great job here, and I do think, obviously, sidewalks are my big bailiwick. We're trying to connect the town from the schools to the neighborhoods to downtown, and I think we really need to start working on that first. But being a member of Design Review, one of the things we were kind of hoping for, and maybe you'll still be able to do this for us, is to give us kind of a consistent look that we would like to carry through with all the new builds we do have, because they don't really look much alike. They pretty much silo each little lot that they get. And we need to decide how we want to, at Design Review, say, well, these are the things that we are looking for, that quaint New England town, the size, the way it's structured, and so getting that kind of definitive, okay, what have we agreed to this? And maybe that's something we could do another type of a survey for, saying, okay, what are you looking for in terms of those buildings? And then the second is the signage. We've tried with downtown signage, we tried a few years ago to change the zoning on the signage. First we just tried to change the definitions, and that was shot down. And then we wanted to be able to make signage not the integral part of a building. And that was, we were told, well, let's wait till master plan is done. Let's wait till master plan implementation is done, and then we'll have an answer. So at this point, is that something that we can actually get done so that we can enforce things and change the zoning to be able to, zoning and bylaws, to be able to get a look that we can all start to say is somewhat of a consensus?
Yeah, I'm not sure to what extent the master plan committee and consultants can define for the town exactly what the design standard should be or what the sign requirement should be. Certainly the plan can give examples of things that we think are reasonable, thoughts as to what could be done to make signage more appropriate. Ultimately, without throwing the ball back in your court, Lisa, I think it falls on those committees that have a responsibility to make the final decisions, but the report could certainly try to address those topics and give some ideas as to what the committee thinks is appropriate. But then I think ultimately the design review committee, the planning board, the zoning board need to sort of figure out what to present to the town as the best scenario. But we'll talk to Jonathan about what the report could entail.
Just wanted to add to that. So we are going to be submitting to the Board of Selectmen for consideration a sign and facade program. So the idea is to possibly, with the Board of Selectmen's support, allocate a certain amount of ARPA funds to funding improvements to private businesses' sign and facades. So that is an opportunity to encourage signs that maybe people don't like so much, that are kind of tired looking, to do something different by funding a portion of the cost. So that's a way to encourage instead of, zoning is often a stick. So you will do what we want or else, whereas a grant program is more of a carrot.
For multi-use buildings, mixed-use buildings, my understanding is they're a combination of commercial and residential space. If that's correct, I think traditionally, maybe they have been, the residential space has been more rental type space, and I wonder if there's any consideration of making it space for purchase, such as in condos, things like that, that might afford one level living for people in the downtown area.
So the town actually doesn't regulate ownership. So it doesn't matter to the town if it's a condo or whether it's an apartment. It's just judged based on its land use. So we're not encouraging or discouraging one or the other. So like I said, we just regulate the use, which would be mixed use or multifamily.
It's great having the town planner here. Other comments?
Anybody else?
Thanks. In the first scenario, the Blake Street one, where is the parking in that one? I might have just missed that.
There's parking in the old fire station here. There's also parking, on-street parking here. New on-street parking here. Parking, surface parking, on-street parking down this side. And then this is a proposed parking structure.
I think the structure might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but the that's not enough street parking if it's really going to be as fun as it looks like it would be. So, yeah, and I think that was it. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Fran.
All right, thank you. So I have the pleasure of being able to walk downtown from Westbrook to Summer Street and down South Street because I'm in that area. Sidewalks definitely would be beneficial because you do take your life in your hands when you're on Route 20. I am happy to hear, at least from many of the people today, that alternative reasonable housing options is going to be important. We do need pedestrian traffic, people who can walk. I think somebody said back there, the old way of doing things, the butcher lived upstairs from the butcher shop, that type of environment. But we also have to have parking for those people like Susie who are going to have to drive down there regardless. So I'm really hoping that the point does get across that we do have to have some form of dense housing. I do have to agree with Gil, though. The presentation made me feel a little overwhelmed, and I was on the master plan steering committee, so it could just be the graphics, right? Because I walked from Westbrook to Summer Street. This doesn't look like it would fit in that area. And again, but I'm not an architect, I'm not a planner. But having the opportunity to have people be able to walk within the area and as well as parking for those who drive, I think is very important. And I was happy to hear that that was what was being said.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments or input tonight?
Yeah, I just had a question. I guess it's not really directly related to the plan, but more to downtown in general. But someone was mentioning about how some of the kind of places that currently do have walking paths and sidewalks and stuff like that. I mean, I do kind of walk around downtown a lot. I would say it probably is the most walkable neighborhood in Northborough, that there at least parts of it actually do have sidewalks. But I think some of the problems that make it seem less walkable is that a lot of the walking paths either are or look or like seem like they're private property that people don't want to trespass on. And I was wondering if there's any way of kind of fixing that.
I think that's definitely something we could look into to better identify, public areas. Yeah. Certainly, that's a short-term thing that we could do. just identify more clearly those areas that are available to the public to use.
Just another comment. So on the topic of like traffic on Route 20 in downtown, so one thing that I had studied recently was the concept of induced traffic. So you might have heard the phrase that if you build it, people will come. And a lot of times people use that phrase for like bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure. But I also heard about it recently being applied to like car dependent infrastructure. So like adding another lane on a highway may incentivize people, instead of taking a commuter rail, to then drive because the traffic got better. So it's just a concept I wanted to sort of put out there, that as we're thinking about complete streets in that area, that it might be like uncomfortable for a little bit if we first put in some protected bicycle lane or something, but it might be for the better eventually as people kind of shift their preferred modes of transportation. It's just something to put out there. And it's about kind of incentivizing like the health benefits, economic benefits, and traffic benefits of those alternative modes of transportation. And for anyone that's interested in like learning more about these concepts, I just wanted to plug Strong Towns and Not Just Bikes YouTube channel. It's been really helpful to sort of digest this type of information about urban planning and design and kind of what effect it has on our behaviors. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say something really positive about the idea of the paths. I'm an avid hiker. I've done a lot of hiking around the trails in Northborough and things like that, and seeing an incorporation of a spot to walk and hike with businesses mixed in is something that I feel like a lot of people really like. Recently, we've been to downtown Hudson, which is one that won a lot of awards for a downtown area. And the nicest thing about it is we could go to some of the restaurants and shops and walk around and then go by the river and walk by the river. And that brings people, and people keep bringing up Hudson and keep talking about it. And I feel like the Riverwalk could do something for Northborough as positive as that. So I really liked seeing that as part of the plan.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Going off that, you know, having an air, John is the Pine Haven Drive. Just going off of that, having paved areas where it doesn't matter what generation it is can use it is beneficial to everyone. We also have to keep in mind remote work keeps on getting more and more broad, which means our community's got to get more and more crowded. And a few people have said it. I want my kids to be able to live here. At the prices now, they're not going to be able to. So I like the plan.
Any other comments?
I just had one follow-up. I think we were talking about in scenario one, there was talking about like office space, and I was just wondering, just with when John's saying, and then somebody else was saying it too, with remote work and such, where I mean, there's a lot of places that are standing empty because of remote work and hybrid work and such. Are we talking about like office space as in like bigger jobs, or like like town offices, or are we like small businesses? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think once again, the exact implementation of this is going to depend on the environment at the time, of the property owners and what they want to do. If in fact there's a developer wants to come in and thinks he has an ability to do something to be worthwhile and would obviously from the developer's standpoint be economically feasible for that person, that'll have a lot to do with exactly what happens. But within large guidelines, we can provide some direction as to where things go. But I think that as this thing rolls out over time, some of it will be developed, will just be based on what the economy wants to see happen.
Just to make sure that it's possible then, just with like in zoning, like it might be repurposed for retail, or it might be repurposed for something else. Then it's not necessarily office space then.
Yeah, the zoning typically would define broad categories of use, and then within that, the development could happen within those broad categories. Yep.
Thank you.
sorry.
Hi there, I'm Judy Boyle, 10 Hawthorne Circle. So I have been waiting a while. So a lot of the questions that I originally had or comments have been discussed, and this is all great. But I would like to say my husband and I, we do tend to go to downtown Northborough. I've been, downtown Hudson, pardon me. I've been following their development for 15 years, and I'm just astonished at what they did, okay? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there's nowhere to eat around here. So for that, we go to Hudson. Last Sunday, we're walking, and we parked by the Horseshoe, the parking area at the Horseshoe Pub. And I said, the Riverwalk, and you mentioned that. My point is, Hudson has done a tremendous job at using their natural resources and turning it into something that won them a national award, okay? Not that we're aspiring to do that, but Dario was saying that you took a walk the other day and you discovered all these walking trails. Northborough has a tremendous amount of natural resources that, who knows, are yet to be discovered. I think we need more time and more people out there discovering these, these undeveloped areas, and not just for Northborough people, people from out of town, and we certainly need to accommodate them with the parking and everything. But we really do have a lot of undeveloped space. We need to spread out and, bring in more people to discover these things and what can we do. So that was just more of a personal comment. And then a question I had, it was a little bit addressed, the development of the redevelopment, revitalization, restoration of a lot of the currently vacant properties in town that are privately owned. I would like to know, have we approached any of these property owners with any are we there yet with any types of incentive? Laura, you mentioned some ARPA funds and things like that. Is this all kind of unfolding, like it's still very conceptual?
So we have specifically targeted certain property owners to attend these visioning workshops and provide their feedback. So there was a gentleman from Harvey at our community meeting number 2. I don't see him here this evening, so we lost him for this night. And there's another property owner who I know attended the first session, but hasn't attended any of the following sessions. So we can invite them to have the conversation with us, but if they don't want to participate, then that is their right. So if they are open-minded about what to do with their property, then certainly the conversations will continue. If they just want to keep the status quo, then chances are the status quo will remain. But there are, like I mentioned with the sign and facade program, so there are certain buildings in town that chances are going to remain for quite a period of time in the future. They can look better. So you can improve the downtown through facade changes, even though the footprint of the building is not changing. And then there are other properties that will change over, like, for example, the current fire station, the town hall. There will be a solution, and then there will be a building that's available. So really, the town only has control over the public realm. The rest is, we can approach, we can cajole, we can ask, but I don't think that the town has the interest in taking property by eminent domain and then selling it to somebody else. I don't really see the town doing that.
Other comments?
Just two quick comments about, because Route 20 has obviously come up a bunch, and that intersection. We live off of Whitney Street, so being able to actually get through that intersection and get to the other side of Northborough is pretty important. So you also, in terms of considering whether you want to cut it down a lane, though you guys have said you really can't, which I'm fine with, you might be literally just splitting Northborough in half, because it's going to become extremely difficult to go from one side to the other at that point. And with Hudson, I don't know how many of you have been there during rush hour, but they also get super backed up. You can sit at that rotary for 5+ minutes just trying to get around it. So we're going to have traffic on Main Street. We may as well make downtown look really nice as well and make it as pedestrian and bicycle friendly as possible, while hopefully not also cutting or creating this dividing line in Northborough. Just kind of, we have to accept it. We live in Massachusetts, there's congestion. That too.
And under the category of making Northborough nice, I think we should express appreciation to Lori for the job she did with the planters on the bridge going over Church Street.
I just ordered 4 more today, so those will be coming.
That was the first step. I think there's a lot of things like that that we can do in the short term, you know, in the space that we have to sort of make things look nicer, as well as doing some more of these, you know, larger scale projects that may develop over time.
And I did just want to point out one other thing, and that is, unfortunately, the Route 20 is under the jurisdiction of Mass DOT, not the town of Northborough. So they ultimately decide what's going to happen with Route 20. Another limiting factor.
Does that include the traffic lights?
Yes. Yep, they own all the traffic lights.
Somebody really, my son calls those an airlock, right? So that's like Church and Pierce. Nobody, you go and you stop, and you go and you stop, and I figured, I mean, there's nothing against Northborough, I figured that like with Northborough, we only have finite resources. We might not have a full-time traffic engineer doing stuff.
Yep.
Whereas the state, I would assume, has a full-time traffic engineer and look at that at some point in time. And I mean, that's a short-term, like, that's a software fix to fix the traffic lights.
I believe the traffic engineer from Weston and Sampson did look at the timing, and he said that there are some minor tweaks that could be made, but overall he thought that they operated pretty well. But he was going to talk with his contact from Mass DOT to suggest that they make some minor tweaks.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Anybody else?
What they're talking about on the lights in the center, they get screwed up when a fire truck or an ambulance goes through.
Oh.
It takes 3 sets of lights to get everything back to normal again. So, and that's going to stay that way until the new fire station is built. And then that may go away.
That's a good point.
So I had a similar Route 20 related question. Like, I used to commute from Northborough to Waltham using Route 20, and I noticed that Northborough and Marlborough had the highest speed limits, whereas Sudbury and Concord had like 25 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour. So why can't we have that? Like, just today there was an accident in Ace Hardware around there, and there's an accident there every year. And it's because cars are going at 40 miles per hour while other cars are trying to get in, and it's like by design we'll have an accident. So have you tried reducing the speed limits in certain areas which have become more dense?
Once again, Mass DOT has control over Route 20. So I think the speed limits in the center, I mean, I travel through there, obviously, multiple times a day. And with the traffic lights, you really can't go any faster than, say, 15 miles per hour. Oh, yeah, that's a.
Like a quarter mile of 30 miles per hour, and then it's 40 miles per hour, so that nobody drops to 30. Everybody keeps going 40, 50.
Yeah, I know that the Mass DOT set certain standards for speed limits, but that's unfortunately not my expertise. That's more of a question for the DPW director.
Yeah, if I could just interject for a second. I think as far as the downtown master plan goes, at this point, we just have to live with kind of it is. I'm sure there's a lot of 20 in and of itself and the traffic that's a separate issue, but as far as what we're trying to accomplish here tonight, it's mainly just to focus on some of these ideas about redesigning, the downtown, and a lot of the comments we've had tonight have been very helpful. Both the comments that have been supportive and the comments that have been critical, are all very valid comments that we need to take into consideration as we finalize the report and present this eventually to the select board. And then nothing is going to happen without decisions being made at a town level, to the extent that zoning has to change, that design review has to change, that money has to be spent. Things are going to come before the town for town decisions, and that will drive, in the long run, what this is all going to look like. If, in fact, the town believes that some of this stuff isn't reasonable and the town doesn't want it, it won't get funded and it won't get done. If other things rise up that the town is really in favor of and they're willing to spend the time and effort to do, they are going to get done. So once again, the plan was just kind of a high-level idea of what's possible. What's actually going to happen, as I said at the beginning, is going to take years to play out. It's going to take what the town would like to see happen, what private investment and private property owners want to do. But I think having this as a starting point is going to move us away from where we are now into a place which starts to implement a lot of things that people want to see, as far as better pedestrian access, better parking, more beautification. And I think it's eventually a different kind of mix of business and residential to some level in the downtown area. And it may look something like this. It may look exactly like this. It may look nothing like this. But all of this is getting us to think about it and moving forward here. And it's going to give us a lot to think about. And everybody in town is going to have a lot more to say about it before it gets done. With that, I thank you all very much for coming tonight. This has been really helpful to us. And we'll keep moving forward. Thank you.